Hello and welcome to Say Hi to the Future, Ingenious Thinkers, a podcast aimed at highlighting the human side of ingenuity. With me today is Elena Iacono. Elena works at TELUS and supports the advancement of the organization's industry-leading well-being and mental health strategy to help keep team members well. So Elena, welcome. And I want to start by reading something to you, something that you wrote. And then maybe we can break it down because there's a lot to unpack here. So here we go. Recognizing that workplace well-being comes down to one thing, how we work with each other. I am relentlessly focused and committed to empowering leaders to be considerate, clear, and consistent with their teams, because when they are, businesses run better and people can feel and do better in turn. Elena, let's start with again welcoming you to Say Hi to the Future. It's really exciting to have you here because obviously mental health strategy and well-being is critical. And why don't we start with that first thing? How we work with each other. How do we work with each other?
Ken, it's so good having the chance to talk to you today. So thanks for having me. And I'd say that paraphrase that you read, that quote of mine, is something that I've held consistently throughout my entire career. And I have a background in strategic communications, and over the years, I've evolved to now work and support corporate well-being strategies and priorities. And I always knew fundamentally that good communication in the workplace enables people to work with clarity, have a sense of purpose, meaning, and it creates less stress because when things are clear, people know what's expected of them, they know how to contribute, and then that ultimately helps people grow. And so I love that you started with that because it really does come down to workplace well-being, really does come down to how we're connecting with each other and how we're communicating and how we're really relating and understanding each other. And so we can throw so many resources and tools and benefit dollars to people. I'm just talking in generalities here. But unless we're being intentional with how we're connecting and leading and working and all that, you're not going to have a workplace where people are feeling good about themselves and feeling good about the people that they're working with. So for me, it all comes down to my tried and true background, which is really smart communications.
I can be a strong communicator. I can be a clear communicator, but garbage in, garbage out. If
Right.
I don't know what's expected of me corporately, top down, strategy, business objectives, how it relates to my team, I will clearly communicate garbage to
A
you.
hundred, 100%. And I think, and it starts top down and bottom up. And I'd say to create a great workplace experience in general is, a systematic approach to thinking about team norms and expectations and having that rigor around all leaders walking the talk in terms of prioritizing team communications and explaining priorities and explaining and making the time and focus for really strong cascading of messages. And it can't just be done from a sense of paying lip service to all of this. Like, it has to be natural. And you're right. There are so many people that I know who are very strong communicators, but they kind of fall short from that leadership perspective to enable a workplace where people aren't so stressed out. And it's because they panic or they're not secure with themselves or they're not secure with the direction that they have to take. So I would say I echo what you say. And it's so important to ensure that whatever comes out is of good quality.
Just to pick up on something you said, because you talked about being secure with oneself. Now, people in my age bracket, and it's not that old, but
You're very
um,
young.
there are many of us in executive positions in the C-suites. We were taught that to be secure with oneself means we must be secure in making a decision ourselves to show strength and leadership and just tell people what to do. So, boy, you got a challenge with people like me.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a couple of things. I'd say the way we're leading has changed, and that comes down to values, and that comes down to what we're expecting. I'm a millennial, whatever. I hate talking about demographics. It doesn't matter. But what I'm seeing is a lot of my peers or just people in general are stepping up into senior leader roles, and they don't know how they're shifting, they're changing. They need to not rely on 1982 practices. Like, I guess what I'm trying to get to is we need to ensure that how we're communicating or connecting or leading is humanistic, is based on values that are reflective of today. And it all just comes down to prioritizing how others ultimately feel. And I know people kind of shrug their shoulders when you talk about feelings in the workplace, but it all comes down to that. And it all comes down to how people are relating to the work that they're doing and relating to their company and relating to each other.
And how do you help people through that? Because I mean, I was a little glib before about who I am or my generation, but it's true, that's where I started. But the other half to that, or other part to that, is when I was about 40, and I've been an entrepreneur for what, 35 years, no very large corporate experience in my life. I did start to take assessments around emotional intelligence,
Mm.
specifically around empathy, and that started to reshape who I was and how I understood the roles of other individuals in the room. What do you do corporately? Is it a similar type of task?
Well, I won't comment about my own workplace, but I'm constantly pouring into the research. And I would say empathy is such a broad concept. Well-being is such a broad concept. There are so many concepts that are coming out of the HR literature. I'm not an HR professional, and I'm glad I'm not, because I try not to get stuck on words du jour. I'm really trying to think of what's the outcome of the employee experience, or what is the outcome of any initiative that I'm working on, and so on. So I would say empathy is such an important one. I think half the time people get stuck thinking about the word and not really thinking about the intentional things that we can do day after day. And I would say injecting a sense of empathy into leadership, or injecting a sense of empathy into all relationships, involves listening and understanding and being curious about perspectives, and sometimes not even saying anything, and really listening to others. And so I would say to anyone listening, let's forget about these broad concepts and just focus on the small intentional leadership practices that we can all play a part in shaping, to really help connect and relate with each other. And ultimately, that does pull people through to hardships or times of struggle and so on. So those are my thoughts on the word empathy.
Going back to that opening paragraph, second set of words that I've highlighted: committed to empowering leaders to be considerate, clear, and consistent.
Mhm.
Considerate is not a word that I have typically associated with leadership.
Why not?
Well, I'll be honest. I've heard from many people, kiss up, kick down is the way to get ahead in a larger organization. And again, we're not speaking about TELUS or anyone specifically
Yep.
at all, but that's what I've heard from many people over many decades about getting, climbing the corporate ladder, which again, as an entrepreneur, I have no direct experience in.
Well, here's the thing about really good role models. I think role models can help us move down a path of learning. And so consistent, clear, and what was the last one? I can't recall.
Considerate,
Considerate, clear.
clear,
No,
and
but there was one.
consistent.
Yeah, consistent. So those three principles, in fact, is advice that my father gave me when I received a promotion earlier in my career. Now, he died last year, and I'm not going to go down a depressing path, but he was a senior executive and officer at Bell. So I'll say it. That's fine. I'm at TELUS. It's good to have a bit of competition. So where I'm going with this is he was the most considerate leader. And I saw that in all the anecdotes when he died and his eulogy and all that. And I think I disagree with you in terms of leaders needing to be not needing to be considerate, because you need to be. And when I use the word considerate, I think of what my dad was trying to instill in me, which is be thoughtful. Think about the outcome of every decision. Think about perspective. Think about how you have to manage up, or think about whatever. And so being considerate for me isn't just about being kind, but it really is about thinking about something from all angles, giving it some very specific thought, and then obviously think about the impact that it'll have on the other person. And so hopefully we can get to a spot where more people are leading with that consideration at play. I like to hopefully pride my dad in keeping that in my back pocket. But I do think that authenticity will continue to reign. And I do hope that people can lead with these more human-based practices that are going to make the difference for organizational experiences for people, which ultimately affects their mental health and well-being too.
Well, and I think that comes down to your last point. Businesses run better and people can feel
Yeah.
and do better in turn. Again, I'm listening to it. I love all of the things that you're expressing, but only one person can get ahead.
What do you mean by that?
If there's a promotion open, if there's
Mm.
an opportunity open. So
Yeah.
at some point, and again, I'm coming at this from devil's advocate
Mm.
perspective in the sense of like I believe that I've been an open and inclusive and considerate entrepreneur. And as I said, at 40, I really took very specific steps to help ensure that I became that type of leader because of being trained, going through business school at the time I did. No, I certainly didn't take a course
Mm.
in considerate leadership. I promise you that. But at the end of the day, business has a winner and a loser. And I'm trying to understand how that translates.
Well, I hope that if there's ever any situations where there's a promotion or, job advancements or what have you, that the right person is selected based on skill set, the whole gamut of skills. But yeah, you're right. There are sometimes people that get ahead that may not have this optimal leadership traits that we're talking about. What do you do in that situation? Well, hopefully they don't fail, because if they become your leader or a peer that has senior leadership, you want them to succeed. But yeah, I don't, it's tough. I mean, I've been in that situation where someone has advanced and I haven't. And I thought, what is it? Did I fail? Kind of gives me fodder for more growth. But ultimately, we should rally behind people that advance and help them be successful. And I know that sounds a little, optimistic, rose lens glasses, but I think we shouldn't allow ourselves to be discouraged if we lose out on a promotion. There's always opportunities to keep growing and learning and contributing in ways that make sense for us, really.
Okay. And
Maybe,
again,
maybe I'm
yeah.
a forever optimist. I don't know.
Well, it's funny because as I'm doing this, and I don't want it to seem like a point counterpoint because I do actually truly believe in that. And I think, and again, I'm speaking as again as an entrepreneur. I think that in my world, it's almost I've always felt it was easier to support people's growth because I can move them up if they wanted to start or leave and start their own company, if you will. I could be very supportive because I was in a position, entrepreneurs are in a position to
Mm,
realize that I guess it's like the music industry. You can have a ton of best-selling artists.
mm,
And I think that there's something that can be taken maybe from entrepreneurship because you can have a ton of successful entrepreneurs starting and developing and building new things and encouraging people to do that is wonderful. In asking you these questions, I was just truly interested because I don't have so much of that dual. I certainly don't have that firsthand dual perspective.
No, I now I understand where you're coming from with the question. So you're looking at that entrepreneurial lens. I was coming at it from a more organizational corporate lens. But yeah, I would say everything we've talked about, though, fundamentally should apply to how we approach our work and how we approach our relationships and so on. So yeah, thanks for the questions.
So let's move on to Food Banks Canada's 2024 poverty report. Tell us about the think piece that you wrote.
Yeah, well, I'm one of Food Banks Canada's single contributors. I know that Food Banks Canada does a lot of work with Corporate Canada, but I've formed a really strong partnership with them. And each month, from a individual community perspective, and each month I write a think piece for them. And we've formed an amazing partnership where I'm basically their community champion of sorts, and I'm raising the profile on various topics. I've raised tons of money for them in the past, which really translates into more food for Canadians in need, which keeps growing year over year. But my partnership with Food Banks Canada is evolving into something of significance. We've got some stuff happening later on as well, a little bit closer. But this piece that I just wrote looks at the poverty report card that they put out, and it's an annual survey that they pulled together. It's an annual snapshot of how Canada is doing. And I think we should all be really disappointed and very angry with regards to where this country is trending. And if you read the report or my synopsis of it, Food Banks Canada also reshares on their social media, so you can find it on their handles too. But if you read the report, you'll see that we're failing across every province. It's not just about food insecurity. I think we have to look at the broader ecosystem and really challenge government at the highest level to finally do something about this. And yes, Canadians can fundraise and I can spend time, writing cookbooks and selling them. But I really feel that our senior leaders of this country are really not into it. They just aren't thinking about the short or long-term sustainable issues that can be resolved, such as housing. You've got to look at the broader infrastructure, sustainable jobs, and so on. So this report calls out that 1 in 4 are financially insecure, but also food insecure. It's the highest that we've ever seen in this country. There's been a 50% increase in food banks usage across this country year over year, last year to now. The CEO, Kirsten Bradley, is she's outraged, as we all should be. Canadians are really struggling. And it's not just about going to the grocery store and not being able to buy a good cut of meat. I mean, literally, there's no food on the table. People aren't taking their medications because they don't have access to food, and so on. Families, mothers, single parents are deciding whether they pay their hydro bill or get some food. Like, what? In this country now, in Canada? This is ridiculous. So we should all be outraged. Do we see an end of the light of the tunnel? Hopefully. Am I optimistic that organizations like Food Banks Canada can help turn this around? Yes. I wouldn't have partnered with them otherwise. But we're really trending in the wrong direction. And the poverty report card shows that every single province is letting people down. And I think we really need to keep challenging government of all levels to really look at this and help change the path that we're on.
And were there insights developed for government in the sense of structure of tax base, that type of thing, use of government funds?
The Food Banks Canada team does a lot with regards to coming with calls to actions and infrastructure proposals and so on. I'm not involved in the policy advocacy. I'm more involved with raising the awareness and the fundraising pieces. So I don't have the answer specifically about what's been proposed to government, but I do know that the Food Banks Canada team is very active with advocating and doing all that lobby work and really ensuring that the government is briefed with regards to the most up-to-date research. But my role here really is just to keep raising the profile, keep fundraising. In the past, I've raised over 100,000. I've got a new fundraising campaign going on right now where I've got a new goal of 250,000. I really want to smash that out of the park. And there's going to be some activities to help do that. But it shouldn't be incumbent on citizens to be leading this. We need to be involved. Absolutely. I think all Canadians can do something. But I'm just worried in general about the path of this country. We're falling behind. And yes, it's starting with food. And if we look at, homelessness and so on, access to sustainable healthcare, I don't recognize this Canada. Do you?
It's not just Canada. I mean, if you look at plutocracy and you look at the Western world and you look at the growing concentration of affluence, I mean, the world has completely changed. And one of the issues, I mean, you talk about activism. The poor and disenfranchised are not able to be activists. There is no one speaking for them when election time comes along. They are not paying, the X million a month in the US to super PACs or to support candidates in Canada. So they need a voice.
Yeah, I think people in Canada, people around the world, I mean, if you want to talk global politics, but I think if we're just looking at, Canada specifically, people do need a voice. I have a friend of mine right now who's in Iqaluit and she's there for work and she went to the grocery store and she was sending me photos, the price of food on the shelf. I mean, I thought she was joking, but she was in a grocery store. I won't name the store. Blueberries, $24.99. A pack of dog food, $169. I said, it's Canadian dollars. She's like, yeah. I'm like, you're joking me. Tampons, $47. Access to nutritional, good food choices, vegetables and so on. I don't even remember what the prices were, but they were well over $40, $50. And let me tell you something. The labels on the shelves were in English. They weren't even in the local indigenous language, which is absurd to me because there may be people who, are reading traditional languages. So let's talk about accessibility and let's talk about equitable access, and then let's talk about pricing strategies. I mean, wow.
No, I am completely with you, Ellen, and I teach a lot of leadership teams and execs about macro trends. And we always talk about the ones that strike them and blah, blah, blah. And then they always, undoubtedly ask me which one moves me the most. And it's plutocracy. And it's because it infuriates me. And it's because there is no reason against focusing on Canada that we should have homeless or disenfranchised individuals. And no, we shouldn't have $164 dog food. I mean, it just there's no rational reason for a country like ours to have the crises that we do. You also wrote some research highlights about the profound impact legacy has on fulfillment,
Mm-hmm.
resilience, purpose, identity, and social connections across generations. There's a mouthful. What were some of those highlights or insights on legacy?
I seem to have a lot of taglines, don't I? Jeez, I should simplify all these words I put there. So legacy is something that I've been thinking about quite profoundly. Losing a foundational figure in my life has taught me a lot. And I'm thinking quite a bit about meaning and purpose and lasting stories and living with true values. And there is a connection back to mental health and good well-being if we think about our legacy, or the legacies that we want to leave or live. I think there's something around living with our lasting legacies now. But I'm doing some research on the side. I'm so curious by nature, constantly thinking about what are people thinking about what's important to them. And so I've got a market research survey out right now that's just trying to get a sense of, are people my age or all ages thinking about legacy, thinking about lasting stories, thinking about who they want to be, thinking about whether or not they should be changing any life patterns now or focusing on other priorities. And it is just such an enriching journey, because what I want to do with this research is still a surprise, more to come. But it's been so humbling to see what people are thinking about. And I'm not looking at this from a very morbid or death lens. I'm really trying to look at the topic from a living more sustainably perspective. And it's just so rewarding to see what people are telling me.
I look forward to it because I mean, I think in my kids are mid-late 20s to 30. I think the notion of legacy, just by watching things is dimming. I think there's so much concern about the world, about climate change, about the challenges they're facing, that they don't get up out of bed with the same long-term visioning that we might have a generation or two ago.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's such a really dark, bleak time. And I would say it's hard to not focus on what's happening all around us, given the scale of everything. So I mean, I would challenge everybody to think about, stay aware and stay on top of the real issues that are happening in this world. It's important to be informed and it's important to act. But we're still alive and we've got one life. And I would say, think about what you can do to control your own sphere, and don't let life slip you by, don't let it just,
No,
don't stop yourself from enjoying it.
no, get out of bed with the desire to do something
Do
different.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, and to shake things up. No, I believe in that. I also believe in, I don't even look at it as dire or bleak, and I hear what everybody is saying, but to your point, I think there's a rebirth at hand. I think that there is an awakening of the next generation to sustainability and sort of a capital S sustainability. And as long as it's not too late, which I truly do not believe we're close to, there's a very positive outcome that can come from the adversities that this generation has been handed by mine.
Well, you know what? I think it offers a sense of deeper thinking about humanity and deeper thinking about, standing up for the issues that really matter. I mean, you saw how passionate and angry I was, which I'm trying to turn that anger into something positive. Those are my dad's last words, if I'll share them with you, was, don't be so angry. Turn this anger into something positive. I promised I would.
Yes.
So I'd say that maybe we're coming out of a time of, bleakness. I hate the word bleakness too, but yeah, I would say that it's rebirthing people to step up, find causes that are important to them and think about our impact on humanity. So maybe the future is positive. How about that?
It is positive. Look, the floods in Toronto today are
Oh
subsiding.
my goodness,
The
I
sun
know.
is coming up.
Good. Finally.
It's all good. Can you tell us about the Sal Iacono family bursary?
Yeah, so that was my dad's family bursary, and it was inaugurated in 2007, I believe. It's been a while. And when he retired from Bell, a bursary was created in his name, in our family name, at Algonquin College. And every year, students are able to get a select amount of money to go and pursue academic pursuits of their choices. And there's an amazing partnership between Algonquin College in Ottawa, Easter Seals, and the Children's Aid Foundation in Ottawa. So my dad just, steadily managed it all throughout his life. And when he passed away, I was helping my mom with some documentation, and I said, "Mom, who's going to lead this?" And so she said, "You go for it." So I'm totally on board, and I've been working with Algonquin College, Easter Seals, and the Children's Aid Foundation to ensure that that legacy continues from a financial bursary perspective. And it is empowering students to go and get that education. Education was so important to my dad. He was the child of immigrants from Italy, came to Canada when he was 2, and he was so smart. And education was just always a top priority in our household. And he would do whatever he could in general to just help people in the Ottawa community also get an education. So this bursary is available for applications every year, every academic year. And we are granting $1,500 to 5 students. I actually worked with Algonquin to expand it. I wanted more students to be able to go. And students can apply to any program. And to date, there's been about 120 students that have gone through Algonquin with this bursary. And my husband and I are building something separate to this, where we want to offer bursaries for universities across the country as well. More to come. But I'm helping run this one now, and it's just been so rewarding to see students pursue academic dreams. I've formed a selection committee just because I want to make sure that it's ethical in terms of the choices. So my committee is formed by 5 amazing people, and they selected the candidates for this now upcoming school year. The stories that these students have written as part of their application, we should all be inspired. From hardships to food insecurity, from parents that are dealing with cancer. These students are persevering, and they have so much hope despite all the stuff that's been happening in their lives. And there's nothing better knowing that someone's going to school without having to worry about the financial situation. So it's just been so great. And I know my dad would be so proud.
I'm sure he would, and the fact that you're not just carrying on, but you're expanding it, I think it's a wonderful tribute to him and to who you've become. So,
No, thanks.
um, cookbook.
Mm.
Somehow I didn't think that would come up in this conversation with you, but you've got a cookbook.
Ken, I'm telling you, I don't know. I never stop. I'm maximizing my time, because when you're dead, you're dead. So I'm Italian. I love to eat. Come on. And I love really good food. My grandmother died in the thick of the pandemic. We couldn't have a funeral for her. So I thought, how am I going to help my mom honor her mother? She died alone. It was just the worst. So anyway, I just started writing that summer of 2020, and I pulled together all of her recipes by memory. Very simple ingredients. I'll make sure you get a copy of the book. It's an ebook. It's beautiful. Tells her story. It tells her story of courage. She came to Canada unheard of. Men usually came first. Then my grandmother came first. And it really just brings to life the notion of a strong hug from a grandmother, which I think at the time we all needed, if you think about April 2020. But the book was a phenomenal success, and it raised over $100,000 for Food Banks Canada. I didn't want to profit a single dollar from this thing. I fundraised, I sold the book, I gave it all to Food Banks Canada, And it was the birth of a really great relationship with Food Banks Canada. But most importantly, it helped generate over 400,000 meals for Canadians in need. And it was all just through telling my grandmother's story and celebrating Italian culture.
Biased but wonderful. And what a notion. When you're dead, you're dead. Elena Iacono, it's been amazing. It's gone so quickly. And just before we go, though, one
Yeah.
last question, because you aren't doing enough, obviously, in your life. Sturdy Glass Sponges. You've got a podcast series.
I actually have two podcast series. One I concluded, which was Sturdy Glass Sponges, but now I've got one called Liminal, which is looking at life's transitions and, you know, the theory behind that. But then I'm unpacking it with some topics like grief and death and menopause and health issues and so on. But my first podcast series, Sturdy Glass Sponges, because that's what you asked me about, was so fantastic. Not only did I teach myself how to use GarageBand, geez, like editing is tough, but I really took a page from nature to look at resiliency and, you know, navigating dark times, coming out from the other side. But what made this show so great was the examples of the guests that I interviewed, people that have lost parents and siblings. One guest has a son who has literally had more brain surgeries than we've ever known, and he's still alive and he's thriving. A friend of mine who is 34 with stage 4 metastasized cancer. So just another colleague of mine who's had to face systemic racism and so on. So I was just looking at these everyday personal examples of resiliency and coming out on the other side, inspired so much hope for people that listened, but also gave me it all happened before my dad died. Didn't know my dad was even sick at the time, but it gave me the skill set to be able to navigate that grief, and also come out unscathed as much as I could have.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing all your thoughts with our audience, with our community. And Elena Iacono, thank you again for being part of Say Hi to the Future.
Oh, Ken, thank you so much. Take care.
You too.